All right. Welcome everyone to our combined farm to family cooking class and our kitchen intuition cooking class. We're all joined together tonight to make a delicious big pot of soup. Even though it's unseasonably warm right now, it'll be a nice treat once it gets a little chillier out. As I said before, my name is Emily, and I'm filling in for Brooke last minute. So we're going to be kind of learning this recipe together live. But so tonight we're going to be making a Tuscan bean and sausage soup. And before we get started, I will introduce the stars of the soup recipe this evening. We've got an onion. Some of you might have 2 onions, depending on the size of them. Some garlic, a can of cannellini beans, a can of diced tomatoes, some broth, either vegetable or chicken, some oregano, and red pepper flakes, along with a nice big bunch of kale. And last but not least, either pork sausages or vegan Italian sausages. All right. And so for this recipe, you really don't need many utensils, just a knife and a cutting board, a big stock pot if you don't already have that out. And yeah, all right, we can get started. So the first thing is we're gonna prepare the sausage. So this recipe was written as if you're using already ground sausage, but your kids all have sausage links, whether they're meat or vegan. So, but we're gonna cook it up similarly to the recipe states. So I've got, I don't know if you can see, I've got my sausage links here, and I'm gonna lay them out onto cutting board. Tilt my camera down so you can actually see what I'm doing. And I'm just gonna cut them into like 1-inch discs, more or less. Yep. I don't have the sharpest knife, so, but that's okay, because if these pieces of sausage kind of crumble up, that's great. It'll all get mixed into the soup and spread the flavor around. So we're going to use all 4 links. I'm just cutting a couple at a time. Keep it more manageable. Also, I should have said earlier, if you are new to these classes, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. And feel free to stop me at any point if you have questions, if you're a little bit lost, or just to share excitement for how your recipe is going. So a little fun fact about these sausages, the pork ones are made with pork that is raised right here at Just Roots. We lease out some of our land to a pork farmer, a farm called Sage Farm. So even though we didn't necessarily raise these pigs ourselves, it's still Just Roots pork, more or less. Alrighty, I'm gonna transport my computer over to the stove so you can see my next move. And again, apologies as we're improvising last minute, cooking in the Just Read's office. You're getting a real behind the scenes look at our.
Alexandra has a question. She asked what size can of tomatoes. The recipe did not say.
Oh, good question. I believe you all got, let me go check. All of the cans and the kits were 14.5 ounces. All right, so I've got my big stock pot here, and I'm gonna turn the heat up to medium to medium high. Let that warm up a little bit. And you want to let your pot warm up for a little bit right before you add the oil, and then let the oil heat up a little bit. So maybe like 30 seconds to a minute of warming up the pot, warming up the oil, and then adding the meat. And so while we're doing that, I'm gonna wash my hands real quick. Okay, so now I'm going to use just a little bit of olive oil. You may not really need much. I'm just going to use like half a tablespoon, give or take. And then I'll take the pot and just coat it around the bottom. Get that nice and warm. All right, I'm gonna go grab my sausages. And I'm gonna add these to the pot. And we want to cook up the sausages. We don't want to cook them all the way, but just a couple minutes until they brown up. It's all right if there's still a little bit of pink in the middle, because we're gonna, once they're the right amount of cooked, we're gonna take them out of the pot, and then we'll add them back in later on. So again, we're not cooking them all the way through at the moment. Any questions so far? No? Well, while this is cooking, did anyone have any fun Halloween parties over the weekend, or do your kids have any adorable Halloween costumes to share?
Not here. We live in the up in the hills in Shelburne Falls, and we don't even get any kids here. So
Yeah.
and my daughter's here. She's an adult.
We're not going to mention my age.
Yeah, sadly where I live, I don't
Counting.
I'm 29 and 11 years.
29 for the 11th
11
time.
time. Yeah, 11 time.
Is anyone joining this class for the first time? I think I recognize all these names. All right, so I don't know about for you all, but the sausage here is definitely starting to cook up. You can hear it in the pot. It's starting to brown, and I'm just pushing them around to make sure they get evenly browned. I don't want them to burn. So if yours are starting to look like they're burning, you want to turn the heat down. Great. So actually, I'm going to take this moment. I think these sausage links need maybe another minute at most. So I'm going to take this moment to pause and rinse off my cutting board so we can get ready for the next step. All right. Ooh, smells so good. I'm going to find a piece that looks about how we want. Okay, so this is an example of about the amount of cooked that you want the length to be right now. Not burned. It's all right if it's a little bit pink, but mostly browned all the way over. All right, so I'm going to turn the heat off all the way. And I'm going to remove the sausages. Put them on a plate for now. One minute here. So if you are cooking this recipe using ground pork instead of links, at this stage you might have you would still want to remove the ground pork, but you might have a lot of fat that's come off of the meat. And so at this point, if that were the case, you could drain whatever amount of fat you want to remove. All right, great. So now I've got this beautiful plate of browned pork. And this would be the same steps for if you were cooking with the vegan sausage as well. You don't, because it's obviously not meat, you don't necessarily have to cook it first, but browning it up in some olive oil will help it get a little bit crispy and more flavorful, as opposed to just chopping it up and throwing it into the broth. All right, so I've got my pot turned off, and I'm gonna carry you all back over to my chopping station. And let's see, the next step is we're gonna chop up our onions and garlic. All right, Move this down so you all can see. Okay, so I'm not very particular about chopping onions any particular way, but this can be a relatively rough chop. I'm just gonna remove the top. Get rid of our skins here. One trick, it's helpful to get rid of the skin, is you just lightly score the onion, score the skin, and then it peels off much easier most of the time. All right, so we're going to use this whole onion. All right, I'm going to cut it in half. And then just going to cut lengthwise. And then turn it 90 degrees and cut the other way. And then push that half aside. And we're going to do the same thing with the other half of the onion. Okay, turning it again. All right. Now, I don't mind if my onions are chopped about this size. If you want them smaller, by all means, go for it. You can chop them smaller. But I'm going to leave mine as is. And I'm going to push them over to this side. There's some space on my cutting board for garlic. Now, the recipe calls for 2 to 5 cloves. So really, it's up to you, depending on how much you love garlic, what size cloves you have. You can add more or less than what the recipe calls for. I think I might use these 4 big cloves myself because I do love garlic. And if you don't already know this trick, if you got the skin on a clove and you're trying to get it off, if you just gently press down with your knife, that cracks the skin, and then you can easily pop the clove out. All right. So from here, trim off the ends. All right, so from here, we're gonna just chop the garlic up super fine, or as fine as you're able to. Always want to be careful of your fingers. Handy technique is to keep the tips of your fingernails down. Use your knife to push garlic around where you need it to go. All right, just want it a little bit finer. All right, so I'm going to say that's good and show you a little bit. Cut about to that size. All right, and so now we're gonna head, let's see, yep, we're gonna head back over to the stove and we're gonna cook up the onions and the garlic until the onions are just getting to be translucent. So let's hop back over to the stove. We're gonna use the same pot that we were just using. If you've got quite a bit of fat from the sausage still in your pot, you might not need to add more oil. I actually don't have very much, so I'm gonna add just a smidge more oil. And I'm gonna turn it back to about medium heat. All right, now I'm gonna go grab my onions and garlic. And we're gonna pop those into the pot. You can hear them sizzling already. And then I'm just gonna stir them around, get them evenly mixed, make sure everybody's coated in olive oil. And again, we're gonna cook these until they are translucent. How's everyone doing up to this point? Folks staying with me? Awesome.
We're doing great.
Awesome. All right, let me grab the recipe. Double check what the next step is. Okay, so we're cooking onions for about 7 to 8 minutes. And then we're gonna add the chopped tomatoes. Whew, the onions are strong. They're making me cry.
It smells so good already.
Oh my gosh. I'm so looking forward to this yummy soup. Just bringing the next ingredients closer to me so that I have them when we're ready.
Are we draining the cannellini beans? Are we gonna drain the cannellini beans?
Well, what's that?
Are we gonna drain the cannellini beans?
Yeah, you can drain them. It's up to you how much of the liquid you want to use. But I drained most of the liquid out. All right, so the onions are looking just about ready. Starting to get translucent. So I'm gonna go ahead and I've got my can of diced tomatoes here. I'm gonna go ahead and you don't want to drain the tomatoes though. I'm gonna add the whole can. And then I believe, yep, we're gonna add the stock next. So again, you might have vegetable stock, you might have chicken stock. Go ahead and add the whole container. Give everybody a stir. And next, we're gonna add our spices. So let's see, we need half a teaspoon of dried oregano and half a teaspoon of black pepper. And if you want a little bit of some spice, you can also add a quarter teaspoon of red pepper flakes. I'm gonna go grab my, I've got them here.
Oops, Alejandra has a comment.
Yeah.
She said, my experience, better to cook onions first and then add garlic so it doesn't burn.
Yep, no, that's absolutely true. And I meant to wait to add the garlic, but got too excited. So thank you for that comment. All right, so I'm adding the half a teaspoon of oregano. And I'm gonna grab some black pepper from over here. Stir that in. And I do want a little bit of kick to this soup, so I'm gonna add some red pepper flakes. But you do whatever you prefer. Let's double check where we are here. All right, so we're gonna now bring the heat back to high. We're gonna bring this to a simmer. So once it starts simmering, we'll turn it back down again. I'm gonna pick up the heat a bit first. And then once it's simmering, we will add our chopped kale, our beans, and our sausage again. So while we're waiting for that, why don't we go back over and we can start chopping up kale. So also with this recipe, you can use as much kale as you would like. Love kale, feel free to put put in more than the recipe calls for, or less. I'm gonna grab I'm probably going to use about half of it. Well, I'm going to start with half of the bunch that came in the kit and see how I like that. So quick tip for if you're trying to get rid of kale stems, hold it horizontally, and then you can just run your fingers along the stem and pull off the leaves. So for this recipe, we're not gonna use the stems. You could if you want to, but I prefer not to use them just because they can be kind of tough. And then from here, I'm gonna bunch up the kale and do a rough chop to cut everybody into smaller pieces.
Oh, just bring the camera and move it down.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
Mhm.
You can tell I'm a little bit rusty with leading these classes.
It's fine.
Okay, Emily.
I also don't have the sharpest knife, unfortunately. All right, so again, just a rough chop. Never cooked with kale or really, honestly, any green. It will cook down significantly. So starting with just half of the bunch here, but I will likely add more. It will.
It's kind of hard to chop up.
It is, and it's hard to fit it all on your cutting board all at once. So it helps to cut it in stages.
No. It just doesn't seem like a lot of broth.
If it doesn't seem like it's going to be enough, you can always add in a couple of cups of water. Or if you have more broth, you can certainly add another container or so. It should be enough for this recipe. Just depends on how brothy you like your soup. So my soup is now simmering. So I'm just gonna now turn the heat down to a medium low.
I think I'm gonna add more tomatoes.
Go for it. Yeah, if you really love tomatoes, by all means, you can add more tomatoes. So now we're gonna let that simmer for about 15 minutes, give or take.
$15 with the kale in it.
Not with the kale yet, just the tomatoes, broth, onions, garlic, and spices. We'll let that give that a bit of a head start. Yeah. Any questions so far? Everyone's doing. This is also a soup that you can absolutely add other vegetables to. You could add some carrots or other root veggies that you get in your share, especially around this time of year. With our extended CSA shares starting soon, our winter shares, you'll likely get lots of root vegetables. This would be an easy recipe where you could sneak in some carrots, parsnips, or anything else that you're not entirely sure what to, any other root that you're not sure what to do with. And like a lot of soups, the longer it simmers, and also the longer it just sits, the flavor will continue to build. That's really,
Yep.
really interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay, we've got a question.
Hi, Emily. It's Alexandra.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Yeah, I was going to say the recipe picture actually had carrots in it. So I thought that was funny that the recipe doesn't.
Yeah.
So carrots would go great, I think. And I'm doing carrots. And also I thought, like I'm somebody that I usually follow a recipe the first time, but if something looks off, like black pepper, that looks like a lot of black pepper. So, I just don't like to ruin stuff. So I personally add less and then add more later. And I think that's part of not being disappointed with cooking is to know, oh, for me, that looks like a lot of pepper, or
Yep.
my child might not like something, or, a family member. So
Definitely. Definitely.
that's part of my experience is you can always add more later, but you can't take away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks.
I was looking at another recipe for the same thing, and it had like the trinity of onions, carrots, and celery.
Mhm.
And they also, besides adding that, they added yellow squash and a zucchini to it, but it didn't have any sausage in it either. So
Okay.
just a different version.
Yeah, sounds delicious. Like a
Yeah,
summery.
sounds good. Yeah. Yep.
That's good.
Anyone made anything recently that was super yummy that's worth sharing?
I cut up an acorn squash, a couple little butternut squashes that I got in the shares, the sweet potatoes, some carrots, and the Brussels sprouts. I did them in a roasting pan with chicken broth, and I did one of the chickens I got on top of it. And it was yummy. It
That
was
sounds really good.
first time I've ever eaten sweet potatoes.
That sounds like a feast.
Oh, it was great. I ate the vegetables for 3 days. I'm not that crazy about chicken, but I ate the vegetables.
Nice. Yummy.
I know my partner's looking forward to this soup.
I make Hoppin' John.
Ooh, I love hot John.
Yeah, my daughter wants to make Hoppin' John soon. She made this past weekend. She made this tater tot casserole, which has like a lot of things in it. It's really good. And then she made a big meatloaf, and that was all really good. But we like to cook here.
Does your family have Pop and John on New Year's Day?
No, not necessarily. I tried to make it. Yeah, she's spent a lot of time in Florida, so that's a big thing there. But she was gonna make it. We just got some beans and stuff, and she just was gonna tell me she was gonna make it now. And I said, well, that's a New Year's dish. And she said, that's all right. I can make it again.
Cornbread.
And the cornbread, yeah.
Delicious. We eat it any time of year.
Yeah, right, sure. Yeah, it's good.
Doesn't just have to be for New Year's.
Yeah, right. Well, my kitchen smells so good. I should bottle it. Make a candle.
I have a tip for you guys. I don't know if you've used this in any of the classes where Brooke has told people it's called Better Than Bouillon. And so instead of buying boxes and boxes of expensive broth or making your own, it's not anyways, I could put in the chat Better Than Bouillon. It comes in a little jar, and this is the equivalent of, oh my God, how many quarts you can make with this, but basically it's 1 teaspoon per 1 cup of liquid, and they have it in all different flavors and low sodium. So a lot of stores like
Great
Big Y and
stuff.
Stop and Shop have it now. And then
Yeah.
definitely like the co-ops. If you want organic or something like low sodium, you might have to go to the co-op or order it online. And if I'm remembering correctly, I believe on Amazon, it's EBT eligible. if folks know
Oh.
about ordering
Oh, that's cool.
using EBT on Amazon. So
I watched for it on sale.
yeah,
I made
And
I made
load up.
tomatoes and okra, and I always put that in it. That's like my secret ingredient that nobody knows. They're always like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know."
Yeah, I've got some at home too. It is wonderful. And definitely a lifesaver too when you don't have broth. You can easily use that instead. All right, well, so for the sake of time, I don't know if it's been exactly 15 minutes, but I'm gonna go ahead and move the camera back over to the stove and check on my soup. And if it's looking good, you can add the remaining ingredients. Everything's simmering nicely. It smells so yummy.
Mm.
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab that kale.
Oh, Nicole has an apron of just roots representing.
What's that? Oh, nice. Look
Favorite.
at that apron. Oh, it's beautiful. That's great. Okay, I'm gonna add in all this beautiful kale. Try not to spill any. All right, and already I'm seeing the kale cooking down. Great. Okay. And I'm gonna grab the beans next. I have the entire can. And that was let's see, that was about a 19-ounce can of cannellini beans. You could use any other kind of bean too, if you prefer a different kind of bean. You could use kidney beans, whatever. Mix that all up. So break the heat up a bit. And then I'm gonna add my sausage back in. All right, this is looking so yummy. So right now, my soup is looking more like a stew. It's fairly thick, which is honestly, which is great. But I want it to be, it's just a little bit thinner, so I'm gonna take my empty can of beans and fill that with some water and add that in. Okay, that's looking better for me. And then from here, we're just gonna continue to let it simmer until the kale is nice and tender. The sausage is hot again. And so about 15 to 20 minutes on that. Also at this point, feel free to grab a spoon and taste the broth and make sure it's seasoned the way that you like it. This is a good time to add more seasoning. Like you can see if it needs any salt, if it needs more pepper. If you want to add some other spices to it, by all means, go for it. I'm gonna grab another little spoon.
Do you recommend that we simmer with the cover off or on?
I would say for at this point, put the cover on.
Yeah.
That's really I do like a bit of heat, as I said before, so I'm actually gonna add a little bit more red pepper flakes. But you do you. You might notice that we didn't actually add any salt to the soup. Certainly, if you want it saltier, you can. But the nice thing about this recipe is that it's already salty enough from the broth, the beans, probably the flavoring from the sausage. You shouldn't need to add too much. All right, and so I've got my, you can't see this, but I covered my soup back up. So I'll show you what it's looking like right now. I'm gonna cover it back up, let it simmer for another 15 to 20 minutes, and then it's ready to eat. And you can serve up a big bowl with, if you have any really nice crusty bread on hand, or you go really well with some cornbread. Really on its own, it's great too. You could also cook up some rice and serve the soup on top of some rice. Whatever floats your boat, whatever sounds good to you, or just have it as is. Alrighty. Great. I'll move back over here as we wrap up the class. Any final questions before we finish up and go eat our dinners?
It's gonna be good soup.
It's
Very good.
delicious. I tasted it. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, good.
I'm glad I added the extra tomatoes.
Nice.
Hi,
Hi there.
and it's actually Lynn Vanel and not Dahlia Vanel as the screen said. I just had a little thing that I do when I'm doing kale. Instead of just, I don't chop it when I'm pulling the leaves off. I just break them with my hands into the size pieces that you want. So you don't have to do that other step.
That's true. Yeah, you can definitely just use your hands with
Yeah,
a
kind of the lazy cook here. Okay.
Awesome. I love all these tips that people are sharing. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining tonight. And